Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is Agatha, and I am the Business Advisory Manager at Business Station. Thank you so much for attending our online business forum special edition today. We at Business Station, we're very proud to bring you this session as part of the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program funded by the Oz Industry. We know these are challenging times for small business owners, and as the federal and state governments begin lifting some of the COVID-19 restrictions, the social distancing regulations are being relaxed in some states, and the prospect of reopening small businesses is becoming more real. It could be happening next week, as early as next week. So we got today our special panelists. Joining us, Colin Jorgensen, our very own CEO of Business Station. We also have Margaret Blade, CEO of Regional Development Authority, Brisbane. We also have Gary Johnson, the CEO of Steel Blue, and Agnes Vaca, the partner in charge enterprise WA at KPMG. And of course, Rebecca, my partner in crime from Business Station, the marketing manager facilitating our Q&A session. So before we start, as always, a bit of housekeeping. This online business forum will be recorded, and the recording will be shared with you once available. We're going to run a forum slightly different today, since we've received so many, it's quite a number of questions prior to this forum. Instead of presentation, we will go straight into the Q&A. If you do have questions live for our panelists as well, please click the Q&A button available on the bottom of your Zoom screen. You should be able to find it. It's right on the bottom. It says Q&A. We will try to answer all the questions today. However, any that cannot be answered, we will compile and send it through with your recording. Now I'll pass it on directly to you. Rebecca, take it on.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm pretty excited about this special edition online business forum, so I hope you all are too. So we're going to launch, as Agatha said, we're going to launch straight into our Q&As since we have received so many. But I'll just start by introducing each of our panelists before I throw them a question. So we'll start with Margaret. As Ag said, Margaret Blade is the CEO of the Regional Development Authority in Brisbane. So Margaret commenced with RDA Brisbane in July of 2010, and she oversees the implementation of regional development strategies, which include collaboration and partnerships with 3 levels of government, business, industry and community sectors. Her background is ranging from partnership broker manager, being part of consultative committee where she facilitated and oversaw funding to community and economic development, as well as planning, implementation and managing projects in small business assistance and Indigenous training and employment throughout Queensland. Sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful, but certainly shows some good experience there. Margaret is, RDA Brisbane partners with us in Queensland to deliver ASBAS, which is how this session is being brought to you today. So Margaret, the first question that I have for you is, how will you be communicating, you being, I suppose, RDA Brisbane, with your clients about the next stages of COVID-19 and potentially reopening? And if that's not super relevant, then perhaps how you would suggest small businesses do that.
Okay, thanks for that introduction, Rebecca, and good afternoon or in Queensland, or good morning to everyone in WA still. So with communication, we haven't stopped communicating. I mean, even though we're sort of all working remotely and everything, it's the communication has sort of changed quite a lot. From an RDA perspective, we're really communicating a lot more with government now. We've got weekly teleconferences with our minister, who's the Minister for Regional Development and Territories, Nola Marino, who's based in WA. So she's on the phone to us every week, wanting to know what's happening. So from a communication point of view, we've switched our role to really pushing out to businesses in the community what the government's assistance packages and stimuli are. And there's so many, it just changes so often. I think as we speak now, the Prime Minister's broadcasting, further changes that are happening. And together with state government and local government, we have to get that out. And we've set up a web page that's a COVID-19 update page specifically for businesses and organisations. So our communication has sort of changed in that respect. I mean, our whole sort of work plan has really changed. From a business's perspective, I think it's important that they need to keep the communication lines open with their customers, even if they are closed down. And I think we've got ASBAS workshops that might cover that topic. But it's really important, you know, through social media, even if you are closed down and you're paying your staff JobKeeper, instead of just letting them collect their $1,500 a fortnight and sit at home, get them onto the social media and get them communicating with your customers and with the community.
Absolutely, yeah, and definitely we have seen at Business Station, we have certainly not stopped communicating. I think we've probably been communicating even more with our audience. It's just the message has kind of been changing, which I guess is what you're saying there, is that it's ongoing comms, but you're just kind of shifting and massaging the message so it's appropriate to your audience. Thank you for that. So the next question that I'm going to throw to is to Colin. So Colin is the CEO of Business Station. He has over 30 years experience in manufacturing, wholesale and distribution models, as well as business coaching. He's an experienced CEO who supervises and controls all strategic and business aspects of the company, as well as the direction in creating a vision for success. Colin has been involved in startups and has also owned and operated many family business models. So Colin, good morning. The first question that I have for you is, how has the demand disruption impacted Business Station, and how do you see Business Station recovering from its aftermath, as well as, I guess, some insights on how you feel small businesses could approach this?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rebecca. Good morning, everybody. In terms of our demand, it's being where we are in Business Station, we take our role as a conduit between small business, federal government, local government and state government very seriously. So our demand has grown dramatically. I think we were talking in the first 6 weeks of the COVID program, I think our email trail, went threefold. Our meetings took longer. Everyone was learning how to I guess, do online meetings. So, our demand changed dramatically. The way all our staff interacted with each other changed a little bit. Even though we've had good communication, we've always had daily huddles. And because we have remote staff, we've continued to do like what we're doing right now. It's still changed the process and the focus, and how our meetings done now differently. So, you lose that little bit of creativity because you're not looking at people's faces, or interactions of a hand signal, whatever. So everyone had to learn a little bit differently. So the demands changed a lot. We were getting a great deal of requests from small business on how to support and how to help. And we're also, of course, getting calls from the federal government and local government as well. How can we help? So that put a lot of demand on our internal staff to develop extra programs, extra deliveries, whether it be a Thrive program, sustain and thrive, or how do you get out of this, or what should you be doing now? So yeah, it put a lot of demand on us, but our staff's come through really well. And I think we've communicated everything, going back to the first question, really strongly through everybody, whether it be the increased EDMs or the targeted EDMs. I mean, Rebecca was very strong. I'm saying, get out, let's do everything. And she's saying, no, it's a new world. You've got to do it in a particular way. So I think we've responded really well in that form. And of course, doing things like this is the concept, so we can communicate even further. In terms of how do you recover from an aftermath? And I'm sure, as I look through and the conversations I've had with a couple of the others on the panel now already, and I don't want to take anyone's thunder, it's going to be about looking at, I think people have to look at the risk mitigation now for the future as well, because we've seen SARS before, and we've seen the bird flu, etc., all the others, and we've got COVID. Who's to say we're not going to get something in 2 or 3 years' time? And the government now is in a position that they can jump very quickly. Taiwan were brilliant at it. They knew, they were ready. They had crisis management in place. And I think now our government is probably ready for anything like this again. So as a small business, I'd be suggesting, and I'm sure Ag will talk about this, that's Agnes, that is, I'm talking about. We've got 2 Ags online, so sorry about that. That will talk about cash reserves, future funding, if you want to call it, so, cash is king, as we all know. So that's where I'll be looking at in the future, but I'm sure we'll cover that a bit further down.
Thank you for that, Colin. So the next question that I will throw to is Gary. So Gary's the CEO at Steel Blue Boots. I'm sure you have all heard of the brand. And if you haven't, you can just check out Gary's shirt. You can see the logo pretty prominently. So Gary initially started his career in the commercial and corporate banking sector, working with Westpac, Merchant Bank Partnership Pacific and Bank West. Since joining Steel Blue as CEO in 2009, Gary has led the brand's expansion into New Zealand and more recently into Southeast Asia, Europe, the Middle East, Africa and USA, providing many learning experiences. Gary is also a director of disability services provider Rocky Bay. So Gary, good morning. I've got a pillar of a question for you here. There have been some pretty significant shifts in consumer behaviour. People are obviously looking for online shopping and the demand for online resources has significantly increased. So at Steel Blue, how will you be managing resourcing when you or when your clients or your dealers reopen their bricks and mortar stores?
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks for that intro. I just want to come back to that very first question first before I answer that one, in that we talk about communicating with customers, but to me it's all stakeholders. I've been really focused on communicating with our staff. I think you touched on that, Colin. Also our shareholders and also all our suppliers. And the feedback we've got is we're the only brand reaching back to our suppliers. This is tanneries, people who make the linings from material, boots, the laces, and that we were sharing where we were on this journey with them, and they really appreciated that. And I think that will add value as we come out of this. But getting back to that question, which is a pretty good question, there's some interesting research. I just sent it to Colin just a little while ago that came out this morning from BCG, Boston Consulting Group. And it clearly shows there's been a trend, there's been a change. I see it myself. I even see my elderly parents in their 80s for the first time ever trying to use this thing, the internet, and do stuff online and come around and show me how it works. How do you do online banking? But there's some research coming out today that quite clearly that shows there's been winners and losers. And obviously the winners are those in the areas where people have wanted cleaning products, meat, groceries, hiking equipment, camping equipment. You can't buy sporting equipment, gym equipment anywhere, bicycle shops. But there's clearly been lots of losers too. But the interesting fact that when I looked at this research that came out this morning in preparation for today was the growth in the baby boomers. Cole, that might be you and I there in that group. But the baby boomers have increased the usage of online. And whilst the average products they're buying was 1.9 compared to the 3.9 products of the millennials, that's a big increase. So thanks, Rebecca, for reminding that one. And what are they buying? The baby boomers, they're buying clothing, footwear, plants, gardening, etc. So there's been a shift. How will that, the $1,000,000 question, of course, is what will happen when life returns to some normality? Hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. Yes, there will be a shift back to traditional models. But there's no doubt about it, there's a group of customers who are now exposed to a form of shopping they never had experienced before. So that won't change. So from our point of view at Steel Blue, we're predominantly business to business. So that is not as quick on the take-up of online as per business B2C. But nonetheless, we expect to see more and more people shifting to online. So how are we responding? We're working with our distribution partners to help them understand what a world-class online offering looks like. And we are only selecting those to go onto our website as to where to buy online. We've been working on our digital assets and digital content to help our retail partners have content for their digital assets and shifting a lot more of our marketing spend towards digital. The other good thing that came out of this research, though, the bit that made me really happy, was there's been a shift to Australian brands. even if they're more expensive, premium Australian brands. So that's encouraging. And I think when we talk later on, what can business owners do? There's a clear shift to Australian brands. So promoting Australian brands, I think, is going to be key for many as they go forward.
Absolutely, yeah, that's brilliant. I suppose the delays in shipping from anywhere outside of Australia has probably also contributed to that shift. I know I've been waiting for about 6 weeks for a parcel from the US, so I've just about given up hope. So I've got a question now, and I'll introduce our panelist, which is Agnes. Agnes is the partner in charge of Enterprise WA at KPMG, another big brand that I'm sure you will all recognise. Agnes has 27 years experience in providing advisory and compliance services to privately owned enterprises in Western Australia. Agnes works with business owners, their finance teams and managers to develop and implement goal-focused business strategies, which include finance process improvement, cash flow forecasting, budgeting, sensitivity analysis, business planning and finance proposals. So Agnes, following on from that last question about the shifts in consumer behaviours and the demand for online resources, how can a small business owner recognise these new client expectations? And do you feel like business models should be adapted going forward to serve these new customer needs?
Right. Thanks, Rebecca, and hi, everyone. I will move to your question in one moment, but I would just like to pick up on one point from an earlier discussion in terms of some of the things that we've had to do in our business. And I wonder if anyone on the call has had to do this, but one of the things we've had to do is actually prepare our team, our managers and all our client-facing staff for having difficult conversations. Because this is an unprecedented event, and we realised that a lot of our staff, partners, and very senior consultants, right down to our sort of newer or younger staff members, are probably unprepared for having conversations with clients in this crisis situation, advising people, taking a phone call from people who are, really worried about their livelihoods, because predominantly we work with private businesses, small and large, but it's, the business owners that are effectively the shareholders. So that was probably one of the first things we did, and I think it's paid off dividends, because we weren't afraid to step into those conversations, and some of those included, people talking about winding up their businesses, how they're going to pay for school fees and all that sort of stuff. So I think we are talking about, look at what we're going to do to look after our staff later, but that was more in terms of what we did and what did the disruption do to us immediately and what steps we took. So I guess talking about business models now and adapting to new customer needs. So look, yes, absolutely. I don't think business is ever going to go back to exactly how it was. And people do need to adapt. And I think people have to be prepared for the fact that this is not going to be a one-time event. The threat of a worldwide pandemic has been hanging over us for a long time. The swine flu and a number of these major viruses that have sort of circled the globe, none of them have hit as hard as this one, but I think this has been a long time coming. And if it's happened once, we hope it won't happen again, but I think people have to be prepared for the fact that it probably might. So one of the things that people need to be able to do is redesign their businesses quite quickly. In terms of a sort of and most immediate recovery, and picking up on Gary's point, talking to suppliers, I think people really have to look at the disruption through their supply chains in the immediate, and really look at, looking maybe at greater automation, where how their supply chains are coping through this, and maybe is it time to make some changes. I would look at things like reconsidering current projects. A lot of businesses have a lot of projects on the go, and I think this is the time to really look at some of those and going, maybe it's courage. Having the courage to let go of some of those at the moment and focus on the really profitable ones. identify things like automation. So look at where, and I know everyone wants to look after their people, but maybe where people are not available or can't attend a factory or can't physically be working because, you know, of illness, how can you automate your business a bit more? Rethinking geographies, rethinking products and services. What have we learned from what's happening at the moment? And understanding your business's key drivers. You know, what are some of the things that that are really critical, and learning what's happened. And, you know, going back to supply chains, I think supply chains are going to also change a lot. They're going to become smarter. They're going to be more agile in the future. Look at, you know, machine learning, predictive analytics, and, you know, things like blockchain to provide more precision and enable real-time decision making. So I think suppliers, if you are a supplier, then I think promoting yourself as local and reliable will be the thing that I would be doing. You know, certainly picking up on Gary's point there, but really looking at the whole business from the ground up and seeing what you need and what you don't need.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for those insights. So we've got a question from one of our attendees, and I apologise in advance, but I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your name there. However, I will read your question, and I'm going to direct this one to Gary because I think this is quite relevant for you. So the question reads, "Hi, I live in Queensland. I started my business a year ago. I started winning projects in August 2019, but in March 2020, the whole thing came to a grinding halt. I help engineering firms improve their staff's project management skills. I also write engineering project management procedures for them. It seems that right now, engineering firms are not interested in growth and development. They are more focused on surviving the current pandemic. So, is there any point in contacting clients for projects, or should I give it a break for a month before marketing my services again?"
Thanks, Rebecca. And yeah, you feel for someone who's just started a business so soon and hasn't had the ability to build up that cushioning that businesses that have been around a bit longer, like Steel Blue, have had the luxury of doing to weather the storm, so to say. I think it's a hard one to know about knowing the business in detail, but there's a couple of things I would suggest people consider and think would be like if they're facing a similar situation. That would be working on your pitch documents, working on all that material you can put on, whether it be LinkedIn or other, to promote the benefit of project management and showing the value you can bring through testimonials, etc. I'd also perhaps diversify the target market. There's been a lot announced by the government about fast-tracking civil engineering projects, major infrastructure projects to get the economy back up and running. So I suspect there's going to be a lot of growth in that area. It may not happen just now, and that's why we've got JobKeeper to help people get through for a while. But when that comes up, that's going to be a massive market. So it won't just be mining related, it's going to be related to a whole lot of infrastructure. So to me, I think it's important to keep your brand visible, keep talking to potential targets, keep developing that list, but perhaps focus more on showing the value you can bring. And I'm sure this is maybe also a good question for Agnes to reply, being in the consulting services, but show the value you can bring. Because at the moment, I agree, people are focused on, some people are focused, I've just got that survival mode, but that will pass. And then you've got to show that value where you can bring it.
Gary, would you not say that obviously this sole trade is difficult when you've got 25 different hats that you're wearing to do. So whether the individual sole trader could look out to the right mentor or support network in some form that they can take those questions to and get someone to help look into their business and look at the diversification, and then look at what the civil contractors are looking for. Maybe they might be able to take off track exactly what they're doing and just move to another field, what you said before. I'd suggest seek out. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Brilliant.
If you can get help, take it.
Go ahead, Margaret, please.
Can I also invite that person onto a innovation network that we have running in Brisbane, or it doesn't matter, it's all of Queensland because it's online at the moment. It's a Expressway Innovation Forum, and we have lots of startups in different sorts of industries, and we connect them with government assistance and peer support. And we meet at the moment online the fourth Wednesday of the month. So I'd be really willing to invite that person to our next forum.
Thanks, Margaret. That sounds fantastic.
I'll get the details from Agatha.
If you've got the details, we'll pop those in the chat so that everyone online can see those, and anyone in Queensland can register themselves to attend. So we've got another question that's come in from one of our attendees. And I think, Agnes, this is a great one for you. Do you have any advice about dropping pricing on products and services post-COVID in an attempt to generate revenue and the economy? What are the risks, and do you feel like this is the way to go in the interim?
Yes, thank you. This is a question that comes up a lot with clients, COVID or no COVID. Look, so one of the things, obviously going back into business after this, and depending on what industry you're in, whether you're one of those booming ones or whether it's sort of trying to invite people into the less popular products or services. One of the things that I will always say is do not do unprofitable work. Do not sell unprofitable products. So there has to be a point at which you break even. So you've got to be able to understand what is your break even position. Sometimes you might have a product which is a loss leader, but leads to a number of unsold products or services, and that's probably okay. So you might consider, yes, I will drop the price maybe beyond the delivery or the production or resale price of something if you can be confident. But one of the things that you really don't want to do is drop prices beyond the point where you are supplementing them in the long term from ongoing cash flow, because that's one of it's what we refer to as the race to the bottom, and it happened in the in Perth, on WA generally, with a lot of the mining contractors or subcontractors, where everyone was supplying, in a bid to compete, supplying cheaper and cheaper staff and cheaper rates per hour, and that actually hurt the industry a lot. So I would say yes, definitely, but know your financials. And Colin gave me a perfect intro before about cash flow, and I am very, very passionate about businesses and business owners understanding their own financials and really understanding their cash flow. Cash flow is one of the things that, if I look across a lot of the businesses that I've worked with, which might have been successful and profitable, but ultimately failed, cash flow would probably be 9 out of 10 times the source of that, or the cause of the business failure. So you certainly want to make sure that if you drop your prices, that it is to a level that is sustainable, that it's not forever, and ultimately that it's not causing a cash flow problem in the long run.
That's great advice. Thank you. Colin, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, look, we have run some workshops on what discounts do to your business, and we do have some templates, etc. So we could probably get those out to whoever requests them. It's like a little calculator program that you can run. So if you're going to give a 10% discount, what's that going to do to your GP? And obviously, what's it going to do to your volumes or your revenue on the outside of the day? Yeah, we can definitely share those if that'll help.
Thank you. I certainly think that sounds like it will help. So the next question I'm going to open up to all of our panelists, and I'm going to ask everyone to give me their quick top 10-second strategy. We're mindful of time and that we've got quite a lot of questions to get through. And I think that this one's quite an important one, so I think you'll all have some pretty different insights to add. So businesses who have seen a complete stop or a significant slump in their business, particularly sole traders, people who are in the trade sector, they're just starting to look opening again and starting their business again. Can you give me your top strategy on how you feel they can build up their workflow again? Let's go with Colin first.
Sure. The old rule, go back to your old clients. Get into your database. The people that used to love you once before and you forgot about them, get onto them first. There's my quick tip. The second one is get a good quality territory plan out and be really methodical with it, the daily, weekly, down to monthly, with it by phone out there, and just really nail them one by one and get back out. So there's my 10 seconds.
Thank you. Ag?
Okay, so I had my first point was contacting customers, personal service will be appreciated. So if they haven't heard from your competitors, you want to make sure that they hear from you. But the other point is contact all new customers. People might have said no to you for a long time, and I know that is extremely heartbreaking when you hear no and no and no. But this is the time when every business, all owners are really reevaluating. So this might be the time when they actually say yes. So go back to the people who have said no many times over and see if this time they'll say yes.
Especially with the shift in demand for Australian products, it seems like now's a great opportunity. Gary, let's go to you. What's your top strategy?
Yeah, so my first one was similar to Cole, was leverage loyalty. So that's the referral piece. The other one that I like to sing often at work here is good process equals good outcome. So that gets back to Colin's one around planning and preparing. But I really is stick to your strengths. You know, what got you successful before will get you successful again. This has been, you know, the word unprecedented, you know, I've heard it so many times, but this is not a normal event. It's a government putting business in hibernation. Yes, demand might be slow to pick up on the other side, but it will pick up. So what made you successful before will make you successful now. So just keep promoting that.
Brilliant, thank you. And last but not least, Margaret.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can add to that is that if there's anything you've learned through the close down, any sort of new ways of doing things, just put that out there. You know, hopefully they've spent their time productively, you know, learning maybe what new consumer trends are, you know, maybe what new technologies and that sort of thing they can implement into their business, and hopefully sort of communicate that to your clients and to your potential clients that that you've learned something and you're moving on to something bigger and better.
Brilliant, thank you. And it looks like our host, Ag number 2, has got some insights.
No, I just want to add one thing, because I completely agreed with, I think, Agnes and Colin and Gary, but also one thing that can be added is probably the B2B. Sometimes we focus on our clients, but, you know, really, in terms of business to business, I think this is the part of the strength of being local and helping, you know, I love that Gary mentioning Australia and like promoting Australian product. That's exactly it. You know, let's source from Australian suppliers and source from Australian, you know, produce everything, you know, and from that B2B locally, I think is a good strength to move forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you all for your insights there. So our next question I'm going to direct to Agnes, and it's a bit of a tricky one to answer, so we'll just take your insights on this based on what you've seen and the things that you've been hearing, I guess, in the industry. So realistically, how long do you think this reliance on government support is going to last? Presumably businesses will not be back to 100% for quite some time. So do you think the stimulus packages that are currently available are going to be enough?
Yeah, look, that is a really hard question to answer because it's very much about crystal ball gazing. So look, there are too many moving parts here. We just don't know. We have nothing to pull on. We have nothing, you know, we have literally no pre-existing history of knowing how, you know, the world will recover, because it is a global economy. You know, if we were purely you know, self-supplying, or we weren't reliant on exports, imports, then that would be a fairly easy question to answer. But of course, that's not the case. And it's really not the case for Australia. So I think it will depend on a whole bunch of economic factors and international factors. They, of course, include how quickly other countries come out of isolation and kickstart their economies. What will be important? I think there's going to be a shift everywhere to more local. So, you know, people are going to want to protect their own economies. Countries all over the world will want to protect, and we've seen this. We've seen around the world, there are a number of countries which would not, the governments of which would not provide bailout type incentives to any companies that are not localized there. So if a company had overseas ownership, they would not be entitled to any government incentives. So there were a number of countries that did this, you know. So I think people might, you know, as much as I think globalization is a great thing, I think we might see some shift away from that. So it really depends on a lot of, and then consumer behavior, right? We've already seen that people are spending their money, but I think people will form slightly different habits, because this whole situation of panic buying, you know, people will probably be looking to be more stocked up in staples, because we keep on talking about new infection and reinfection. So I think people will be ready for that. So there will be a little bit of that behavior. So I think, you know, despite what we do, I don't think the incentives will be enough, the reality is. And I think people have to, and businesses have to look at new and different ways of moving into the market. And I think now's the time to do it. And as we've talked about, I would keep on bringing up the word, you have to act courageously in your business, because a lot of the things we've talked about, it is about being courageous in the things that you're doing, and it is time to try something different. And I think the incentives will go a long way, and how lucky we are really to live in a country where the government has been able to implement such an incredibly huge incentive and bring the legislation through so quickly, which is incidentally very complicated despite to what we were led to believe to start with. But I think consumers will behave a little bit differently, and we need to really think differently also in terms of how workforce will be remobilized. So it's, yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
I love that line. Businesses have to act courageously. I think if anyone takes anything away from this, it's that quote. Thank you. Gary, the next question I'm going to direct to you, because I think this is quite relevant for your company. So for businesses who may have completely stopped work during this time and stopped production, the impact on their supply chain and production will obviously be quite significant. So the cost to get started again will also be quite significant. So the first part of this question is, do you have some strategies on how they might be able to manage that cost? And then the second part of the question is, do you think that this is an opportunity for businesses to maybe reevaluate their supply chain and their logistics strategies?
Yeah, there's a lot to that question.
That's
Thanks,
a
Rebecca.
meaty question.
Yeah, it was a good one. That's a good one. A couple of aspects to this. First of all, in terms of getting going again, obviously that's cash flow related. So this is where maybe people need to start thinking about, do they need to move from more of a fixed cost model to more variable cost? Is that an option to try and reduce those costs? This is where I get back before those communication and relationships you have with your suppliers. So if you have long-standing relationships with good suppliers and have had good payment terms, they will more than likely give you extended terms. We've done that with some of our loyal customers who we know have got very good payment history, but we know the challenges they're facing. We're giving them extra days or have agreed to payment plans, and that's worked well for both parties. So I get back to that loyalty piece. It's a two-way street, but if you've been open with and communicating, that will work. And if I reflect upon my days in corporate and commercial banking, the biggest thing a banker wanted was a customer to be upfront with them and communicate, and then they work with them. It's when that communication stops, then people tend to assume the worst. So yes, you can look at your cost models. You know, can you change from a more fixed cost to variable cost? Can you work with your suppliers to get some extended terms? Is that possible? Then you've also worked with your customers. Now, depending on what sector, But if you're targeting B2B customers, perhaps you can agree some different payment terms where you get part up front, as opposed to doing all the work and funding all that supply chain and getting paid at the very end. Perhaps they could agree a little bit like you build a home, you get so much up front, so much midpoint, and the rest at the end, the profit and the component. So there's a sharing of the risk. That's another way potentially you could do it. So these are all different ways, obviously outside of traditional ones of working with your banks to try and get additional funding. But if they're difficult, then I suggest people look at more options like that. In terms of re-evaluating your supply chain, I think it's more around, I think it was Colin touched on this, it's about your risk mitigation. And it's not, you know, I always say in business, you've got to be risk aware, not risk adverse. Because if you're risk adverse, you won't be courageous like Agnes said, and you'll never get into business. But you should be risk aware, and there's a difference there in my mindset. But aware is being understanding that risk, and this is where it gets back to in terms of supply chain. Do you have enough stock? Like stock, cash is king, Cole, but right now stock is also king. A lot of our competitors don't have stock, so who do they call for their boots? Steel Blue. It gives us a chance to get a new customer. So it's around re-evaluating not just your supply chain, and maybe moving away from this really aggressive JIT just in time to having a buffer stock. Now, we always carry a buffer stock of nearly 3 months. We may increase that post this, you know, one of the learnings. But right now, we are bloody well glad that we've got this 3-month buffer stock. It's taken a lot of stress off, and because as Agnes said, it's the demand is varying, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future in Australia, but I look to New Zealand. Give you a quick example, where they had their level 4, their very tight restrictions, our sales dropped at 20% of normal levels. They've just gone to level 3. Within a week, our sales are up to 65% of normal levels. So it shows you how quickly demand can come back. That's in the space of just over a week. They're announcing to go to level 2 next week. We hope that happens, and we hope that has a similar lift for us as well. But getting back to supply chain, this is where I feel the relationship piece plays into play, but also what Cole's talked about in terms of risk mitigation, or being a risk aware, but not trying to eliminate risk, but mitigate it.
Gary, do you think the just-in-time process that I was thinking about before was, do you think other businesses are going to take that on? Because there's a lot of them were caught out.
I think just-in-time and hot desking are going to be put in the sin bin for a while, and they won't be talked about for some time. And you know, and I think what we should look at is our farmers. Our farmers understand risk. Good farmers have been around from generation to generation. They understand ups and downs. Now theirs is not caused by COVID, but it's caused by drought. And so they've adapted their farming techniques to deal with that, but also they understand you don't have a good season every season. So they put money aside, or they build up their balance sheet to get them through. So definitely I think there'll be over time, people will try to build their balance sheets up. Now I understand that's very tough to do if you're a brand new business or only been in business 1 or 2 years. But there are businesses that have been around for a long time who really haven't put enough away in their balance sheet. Now, that really then questions the management strategy. So there's a high-profile airline case that's going on right now. And you could argue, yes, it's COVID, but you also could argue, wow, what sort of business only has enough capital in the last 3 weeks? So,
yeah.
Thank you for that. That was some great insights there. Margaret, I think I'll throw this next question to you. So going forward, and I guess this flows on from what you were just saying, Gary, about risk and being aware of risk. So Margaret, going forward, do you think that businesses should have contingency plans in place to manage the financial risk that a crisis of a similar size may cause?
Yes, definitely. Like if anyone sort of learned a lesson from this, it's that it could come back again. I mean, it's been the biggest economic shock in our time, probably since the Great Depression. And I think businesses have to have contingency plans in place if they're going to look to survive. Resilience is really important in all this. And as Gary said, farmers have got that down pat. In Queensland, particularly up north, that gets cyclones every couple of seasons. They've got their resilience measures in place for flooding. the whole town of Gympie in the Wide Bay Burnett region in Queensland have got contingency and resilience for the whole town, which enables, because the main street floods every time there's a huge downpour, the main street floods and shops have to close. So they've got a contingency plan in place that's sort of managed by the local chamber and the council, and businesses can get everything out of the way, and then they can reopen within 24 hours of that floodwater receding. So there's some really good examples around the place of contingency plans for businesses and for whole regions or for whole sectors. So I think we'll be looking at that's going to be a bit more prevalent. It's not just sort of for each business, but I think sectors and regions are going to be looking at resilience and contingencies.
Absolutely. Colin, I think this question is quite relevant for you, given that this is something that you have implemented at Business Station and have helped other small businesses with. So given the change in the market, the change in demand, and the change in consumer behaviour like we've discussed, how do you feel businesses and business owners should start setting goals, both for the short term but also the long term?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. We have done that. Obviously, you can follow the old standard. Go onto Google and get the smart action if you want to, and follow the process. Is very easy. Obviously, planning meetings. The good thing that I've got around me is good support, whether it's with internally or externally. And I've got mentors. There's a couple of them that I sort of chat to quite regularly online with me at the moment. Which is fantastic, and we've got others as well. So so we do our planning. We run a strategy on a page, quite simple, because as you know, many people do a big business plan. It sits in the drawer, no one ever looks at it, and you only bring it out to give it to the bank to get some money. So we do run a strategy on a page, and we present that every month to our board meeting. So we've got accountability on our actions and the way we roll through. We have planning meetings with each one of our staff members, or each manager, I should say, has their own section that they manage, and we keep them accountable on that. They've got their own KPIs to work to. So we also have, obviously, we have a 3 horizon strategy as well. So we do very much look at the 1 year, but we also look at 3. And the big question is, are you relevant in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? Is your product, is your business relevant? And we know the disruptors that can come in very, very quickly to business. I mean, I think Ag and I talked about this the other day in terms of, how relevant is Sir George's Terrace going to be now? If you're, I don't know, I'll just use BHP, and you've got 5 floors in Sir George's Terrace now, a lot of their staff have learned how to work from home. So do they need those other 2 or 3 anymore? Or maybe even KPMG, they've got a few floors there. Which would be nice. We'll get some, rate reductions, which would be good because you won't be paying the rent out. But in all seriousness, are you relevant further down? So I think that's where it comes into planning. And I go back to setting goals, etc. You've got to have support. You can't go, especially if you're a small business, don't go alone. Go out and get support.
Brilliant. Thanks, Colin. Yeah. I think the views on St. George's Terrace over the river make that location pretty worthwhile. But certainly agree. So given I'm quite mindful of time, and I think that this question is pretty important, so I'm going to open it up to everyone, and I'll go around the table to get insights. So based on your experiences in business and the things that you've been seeing over the last sort of 2 to 3 months, what is the best piece of advice that you can offer small business owners who are either facing the prospect of completely starting over or starting again, possibly with a new or updated business model? So Ag, let's start with you.
Okay. So really picking up on Colin's point, I cannot stress enough how important business planning and strategy is. A lot of people who start a business do it because they're passionate about something, and that's fantastic. And they're really a fantastic subject matter expert. So then they grow that into a business. But a business is more, it's really more than just that being the subject matter expert. It is about having really great finance people, operational people. So it's making sure that the strategy encompasses all areas of the business that the business needs to thrive, and survive. So that's really, really important. I think the design of a business model, rather than the business model, and we see this a lot, evolving sort of spontaneously and on an ad hoc basis, actually design the business model as it's supposed to be, and really have a reliable and robust financial model. So there's a model called a three-way forecast, which is really important, and build into it not an infinite set of what if scenarios, but enough. And certainly, you know, looking at things like now going, you know, can I put my business into hibernation? How quickly can I do that? How responsive can I be? We've probably never had to do that before, but you probably need to work out which costs. We talked about variable costs. Gary talked about them, you know, which costs that are fixed, you can actually make them unfixed, you know, and maybe having pop-up offices and not having people in offices. And the last thing is a little bit sort of off-center is if you're starting to redesign things from scratch, ask yourself, what is it that you really want to be doing? What is it that you love doing? Because that's ultimately what you're going to be good at, what drives your passion. But what is it that you want to be doing? If you have a fresh blank piece of paper, what's going to be the thing that's going to drive you? So not a financial piece of advice, but certainly one that I take from my own book and experience.
Be courageous. That was the
Yeah.
day. Colin, let's go to you. What's the best piece of advice that you can offer people who are starting again?
Why? Simon Sinek. Go and watch the video. It takes 15 minutes. Why? Why are you doing it? And then you can get the understanding of if you know why, then you can sell anything. You can make anything. You can promote anything. But you need to know why. A couple of little lessons learnt, and I think just recently I'll go back to it again, is reserve cash. Profit is food, cash is air. There you go, straight into your heart, Agnes. Thought you'd love that. And the best bit of advice, and as I said, I'll go back to peer group meetings and mentors. Absolutely, don't go alone, get help.
And a bit of a quick plug here for ASBAS. We have a whole suite of business advisors available at a very low cost. So if you are looking for a mentor or a coach, look no further than ASBAS. And we'll segue into Margaret's best piece of advice, given that they deliver ASBAS for us in Queensland.
Yeah, I think mine's a very sort of practical piece of advice. Get your systems, processes and compliances in order. We've heard of companies at the moment that haven't been up to date with all their tax compliances and their records. They haven't been lodging their BASs regularly, and now they're finding it difficult or impossible to claim the stimulus measures from the government. The ATO's got some really great free webinars that are just running, I think, daily at the moment about setting up a business and how to claim, or the businesses that are already operating, how to claim the new stimulus packages. And I think I've given Agatha the link for that she can share. But really, if you're starting off again or starting afresh, get everything, get your compliances in order, get your house in order.
Get those ducks in a row. Gary, biggest piece of advice that you can offer?
Yeah, a lot's been covered already and great stuff, because I had written down plan, which gets back that scenario planning that Colin and Agnes both talked about. Managing your cost, which I've already touched upon. One thing in business, money out or spent is out. You can't get it back. Revenues, so expenses are certain. Revenue is always a degree of uncertainty. So plan those scenarios so you keep some powder dry. But I guess in terms of the other two pieces that maybe I want to elaborate that haven't been fully covered off was around engaging your team. So that team might just be yourself as your sole trader with your advisors that we've talked about, or your friends or your networks. But if you've got people in your business, engage them. There's a lot of talent there. They'll have a lot of ideas to help you. You're not on this on your own. I was very open with our team when the revenue initially dropped quite hard. This is what we're going to do. And people put their hand up to take leave and all sorts of things. Didn't have to force anybody. People just did it. They wanted to do their piece, so engage, I guess, is the piece. And the final one, which gets back to, I think, what Agnes was touching on, believe. Believe in yourself. You were successful before, you'll be successful again. Yes, your business model might have to adapt and be different, but what made you successful will see you successful again. This is a period of hibernation. It's not, that's all it is. So believe in yourself.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Gary. So to close, I'll hand over to Agatha, who will give us a bit more of a rundown on ASBAS.
So thank you so much. That was very insightful. You know, I'm speechless because how amazing you guys are, having, you know, 4 experts that's doing it and, you know, helping out everyone within your community. So thank you for that. I do want to mention that we're here to help you all. So Business Station, through the ASBAS Digital Solutions, we're delivering quite a lot of options in the small business help. We're delivering the online workshops. Those are going to be intimate small group online meeting where your participation is interactive, it's hands-on, and it's directly applicable to your business. We're also running the C19 Biz Booster. These are a series of webinars. We'll be covering the digital solutions and the general business advisory as well. This will be free. And, you know, we want you to access them because we believe we will help you through this time. Now, I just want to thank you again, Margaret, Gary, Agnes, and Colin, for all your insights. You know, it's been such a powerful hour. And of course, thank you, Rebecca, for facilitating. You know, always such a pleasure. And stay safe. And hopefully next week we'll be able to see each other in person and more less self-isolation. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Bye.
everyone.
And be
Thanks.
safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.